Boss Man, right?
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Dr. Regina Bradley, and this is OutKasted Conversations, Season 2, Episode number 1, with the homie, the wonderful, the great Dr. Justin Hosbey, Assistant Professor of Anthropology here at Emory University. Dr. Hosbey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm trying to be cute,
You are, and you pulled it off.
A little something.
Yeah.
We got to get this conversation started. I have to ask you the official question to get into the club.
Yes.
How did you become outcasted?
Okay. I became outcasted watching Martin as a child. I remember the episode of the
You
Players
actually
Ball
had to stay up that
episode.
late?
Well, actually, that's the thing. The one exception I had was staying up past 8 o'clock was Martin on Sundays.
Word?
Yes, that was my one exception.
Oh, okay.
So I watched Martin. It was a family thing. I believe it was Thursday. It was Thursday. But I remember the episode of Martin with the Players Ball episode, which is one of my favorite episodes. But then OutKast performs like at the very end of that. And I learned later that I think L.A. Reid had coordinated them to kind of perform on Martin because it was a big black TV show, and that was like their first televised performance. So as a child, I didn't know who they were or what it was. I just said, okay, this is a nice little song. It's Players Ball. It sounded like it was made for the show, though. I didn't know it was like their actual song.
You thought it was like part of the whole Martin
I thought it was
scene.
called a Martin scene.
Oh.
So, but then, that's how I first learned about who OutKast was.
Oh, okay. So that's when you first saw him. But like, when did you become like, these are my people?
My people, I think ATLians.
Oh, okay.
ATLians. When I first heard that song, I think it was Elevators. The first song I heard was Elevators. I saw the video for it. And I think I was maybe about 8 or 9 years old. And I remember seeing like them as aliens in the pyramids and how they would walk in and just that me and you. Yeah. It was kind of like, okay, who is this? I think that's what I love about OutKast, just sonically. It was a sound that when you first heard that song, you were like, wait, what is that? Who is that? And very few songs make you feel that way. But I think Elevators was the first like conscious time I said, oh, wait, this is a group called OutKast, and they're from Atlanta, and I love this song. And from there, I was hooked.
Okay, so tell the truth though, because you from Atlanta.
Yes.
So you're officially from here. You don't say the T's, right?
No, I don't say Atlanta. No, I'm from Atlanta.
Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm from Atlanta.
Okay. So I mean, like, in your work, Atlanta is pretty like pronounced in how you think about this idea of anthropology and how we think about storytelling and everything like that. So for the folks who aren't academically initiated just yet, when you say that you are an ethnographer, what does that mean?
What it means to me is I like to do kind of deeply textured, you could call them analyses of particularly Southern Black social life. So I like to meet Southern Black people, learn about their culture, learn about how they interact with the world, how they make meaning. And also I'm thinking about just the historical kind of political economy of the South anyway, and trying to always keep that in kind of relief as I think about the cities where I do research in now. So I do research now in New Orleans and Atlanta. Right. So thinking about the history of the plantation and how that structured so much of social and economic life in the South, and about how Black people have always found meaning even within that kind of context and have resisted it and fought against it and often use performance art and expressive art to do so. So I think as an ethnographer, I really want to do kind of deeply textured, rich, kind of, almost narratives of Black social life in the U.S. South.
So you cheating on Atlanta with New Orleans?
I am for a long time.
So I mean, I really like that point where you were talking about how arts and culture help us really think about the deeper textures of the society and communities that we're in. How do you think OutKast, can OutKast be considered, ethnographers?
Definitely.
And how so? How do they do that?
Definitely. Every time I have my godmother lives in East Point. So I pass Hetland and Delowe like every time I go to her house. And like just knowing before they put a sign there saying this is the infamous Hetland and Delowe, being in East Point and just knowing that's what they were talking, they were right there in the MARTA bus stop. Yeah, I'm like, in my mind, it's like whenever I think about East Point and that spot right there and that plaza right there, I think of OutKast. When I think about just riding down 85 and I-20, like so many of the kind of landmarks of Atlanta that people think geographically, I think I learned through OutKast lyrics. I think as a child, you kind of know, but then when you hear somebody rap it and spit it and it rhymes, you're like, okay, yeah, riding on 85, going down I-20, trying to find something there, doing that. I think for them, they kind of helped me understand in many ways the geography of Atlanta. I think the way that they talk about places and situations and different kind of Black cultural hubs in the city. They helped me understand and organize kind of in my mind, okay, this is Atlanta. This is where that is. This is where that is. This is how things are spatialized. Black people live in this part of Decatur. They live on this part of the West Side. They live on Old Nat in the South. It's like that helped me organize lots of, especially in terms of race and class and space in Atlanta. OutKast, I think their kind of discography can help you really distill out, particularly in the 1990s, what Black Atlanta is. And what was happening in Black Atlanta.
I mean, like, let's take that a step further, though, because, when we think about Atlanta today, it's like you don't necessarily have to put Black Atlanta. It's just Atlanta, that's where all the Black folk at.
Exactly.
But that hasn't always been the case. So, there have been historical studies like Maurice Hobson's Legend of the Black Mecca, right? But from an anthropological perspective, can you talk a little bit more about how, not necessarily just OutKast, but also just like Atlanta artists in general have kind of reconfigured this idea of what Atlanta means as a geographically Black Southern space.
Yeah. What I love about, I think, particularly Black artists, particularly Black hip hop and R&B artists who are from Atlanta and who really claim Atlanta, is that you can kind of see, in many ways, I feel like, the facades of Atlanta. And I feel like in many ways they deconstruct those facades of Atlanta, particularly Black Atlanta. I think that for people who are not from Atlanta Black folks are just, they're the bomb, they're the shit, they do everything. Y'all had the best that, the best that, y'all had the money, y'all had the cars. It's very kind of materialistic in the way they see. I come to Atlanta and as a Black person gain material wealth being there because there's so many Black people who are doing well there. But I think that with artists like OutKast, with artists like Goody Mob, even contemporary artists like, I like Black, for example, R&B singer, I think that they really peel back the layers of the fact that Atlanta is a city that has the greatest income inequality of any city in the United States. And I think that they offer, through their lyricism, I think even like 21 Savage, lots of people, even lots of trap artists, they really break down the facade that is that all that glitters is not gold, and how in Atlanta there is that accumulation of wealth for Black people and for some Black people, but there's also an underbelly of Black folks who are struggling and who are kind of like the coals in the furnace that are making the furnace run that gives the wealth to the other people who are wealthy in the city. And I think that oftentimes with their work, they lend voice to that. Because they show you the good side, the party side, the wonderful wealthy side, but also you dig into the narratives. I think about Toilet Tissue, that song, one of my favorite OutKast songs. And just about how that's talking about, okay, a woman trying to really have an abortion, can't get an abortion. So what happens?
Well, she's a teenager. She's
14 years old. So I think that's why I think Atlanta artists really peel back the layers of that kind of decadent facade I think that people get about Black Atlanta. And they're like, okay, yeah, it's nice. And you come down here and visit, it looks really good. But then let me peel back the layers and show you what's really happening for people who live here.
You did it. We're going to go there. We're talking about the trap. So
yes.
We had a really interesting conversation a few months back about how different areas of Atlanta trap meant something different. So it's like what trap meant for T.I. coming out of Bankhead is different than somebody else, than like Migos, for example, who's talking about trapping out of Gwinnett. That's a long way to trap out of Gwinnett. So, I mean, like, can you talk to me a little bit more about, trap isn't anything new, but it's really fascinating, especially for me, how it has like exploded in mainstream. You have like global. All trap, everything, global even. So I'm just curious,
there's an EDM trap.
Yeah.
There's EDM trap music now. What? Yeah.
I mean, like, okay, so I had a student who told me like Katy Perry's Dark Horse was trap, and I was ready to throw all my markers at her. And the reason I was ready to throw all my markers at her was because I was like, first of all, trap isn't glorious. I really don't know about no white folks in the trap.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about like how trap helps us think about these geographic locations in the South and how they manifest?
Okay, because after our conversation, I thought about it and I talked to a couple of friends of mine, and I realized, to me, thinking about the elements of trap music as it came together in Atlanta, I feel like, I'm speaking purely as somebody who, not as a scholar, but somebody who grew up in Atlanta and who has seen it. I feel like, growing up, for us, 3 6 Mafia was a really, really big deal for us, kind of culturally, also sonically. I think that the instrumentation, the way that they actually made the production style of kind of Juicy J, especially in the 90s, early 2000s, for us, that was like, okay, that's sonically what we want to listen to. I think that in many ways, the elements of trap began also, I think, in Memphis. I think lots of it, and I think you can't say it came from Memphis, but I think that lots of elements of it came from that production style from Memphis.
Memphis people gonna come for you. You know that, right?
Well, they don't believe that? They don't think so? They think that they originated it?
I mean, like, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, if there is a debate about the origins of trap, then Memphis and Atlanta are definitely in
right.
The yeah.
So I definitely want to pay respect to Memphis, but I think that growing up in Atlanta for me was funny because when T.I. talked about trap music, of course, and him saying he coined the term, or he was the first person to really put the term on, I think about trap in terms of kind of subject matter and also sonically what the music does. Yeah. And for me, when I think about contemporary, like trap music that's popular now, that sound for me emerged in East Atlanta. That's a sound that kind of helped, that Zaytoven and Gucci helped to build. They helped to kind of cultivate that sound. And to me, when I hear it, I just think of East Atlanta. I think of East Atlanta when I hear like that kind of trap music. However, T.I. being from the West Side, it's about the subject matter. I think about T.I., I think about Young Jeezy. Like the subject matter of that, yes, that's trap music. But I think that oftentimes, and does it make sense to kind of delineate between the subject matter and sonically? I think there's a trap sound that I think the world has taken up and kind of tried to work with, and now you have EDM trap, and they're kind of using elements of that East Atlanta kind of sound and what they're doing. But I think that in Atlanta itself, I think that you have trap music that's East Side driven, you have trap music from the West Side, then of course you have the Migos from the North. And I think that they all bring something different because they all have different kind of Black experiences. I think that they kind of experience and visualize the trap in different ways. If you're from East Lake, and you saw what happened in East Lake with the redevelopment, gentrification of East Lake, okay, that produces a certain kind of, I think, urgency of sound with what's happening in East Atlanta with gentrification being pushed out of East Atlanta. I think from the West Side, I think about growing up listening to OutKast and Killer Mike and T.I. And for us on the West Side, there wasn't that same sense of kind of like being pushed out urgency. It was more so about Black folks have always been on the West Side. We've always lived here. We got high schools here. We got institutions here. West Side, that's how we live, and we're just comfortable here like that. Even though we still face those issues for real. At the time growing up, it didn't seem so urgent because I think now, I talked about it in my interview in the symposium about seeing white people living on Cascade. And I was driving down Cascade to go to the beautiful restaurant. And I saw somebody white living two doors from the beautiful restaurant. I'm like, wait a minute, when did white people live on Cascade again? Because they left Cascade en masse in the 60s. And then now they're coming back up, from the West End up through Cascade. So I think and on the West Side, people are feeling that crunch as well of gentrification. But I think that oftentimes the sound and the way that music is expressed reflects the social conditions of the Black people who are living there. And I think that's why when I hear that thumping, that melodic sound, I'm like, okay, East Atlanta. That just makes me feel like East Atlanta.
That's fascinating.
That's how, in my mind, kind of a more, from the West Side, it just sounds a bit different. It's a bit more soulful, I think. Not that it's not soulful, but I think that the melodies and the chord progression is a bit more soulful R&B infused. But I feel like on trap from the East Atlanta, it just feels much more urgent. And I think it makes me think about just how living conditions for Black people in those areas are different. And they're facing different forces that are trying to kind of contain them or exclude them, and then the music emerges in that context.
So, final question. So, we all know that Atlanta is now known as like the music capital, pretty much like of the world right now. Everybody come to Atlanta, they don't want to leave.
Right,
you know what I'm saying? But as an anthropologist, how can music help us really understand this current social landscape of Atlanta? And where do we go from there? How do we continue to document and evolve how we understand what Atlanta, especially Black Atlanta, to me?
I think it's important to always say Black Atlanta. Because to make it clear that we're talking particularly about Black folks who either live in Atlanta, or from Atlanta, or engage with Atlanta meaningfully. I think it's important to always make that note because I think white Atlanta is totally different from Black Atlanta in many different ways. I think when people think Atlanta, they're thinking of Black Atlanta. So I think that we'll just say that then. So I think, especially for Black, I think about some contemporary artists that I really like Earth Gang. I like Earth Gang a lot. I like Black. And I think that
Rory.
Who?
Rory.
I love Rory. I love what Rory's doing. I love his artistry and how he's trying to reshape this whole corporate-driven kind of industry thing. But I think that really thinking about the ways that younger artists are taking up music and what they see, how they find their voice in Atlanta, and how they're thinking of certain issues in Atlanta, certain social issues in Atlanta. I think that's what's useful. I think that by trying to figure out for the younger generation, you know, those who aren't experienced in the industry, have accumulated lots of money, and now they're rapping about what they do every day as a rich person. The people who are really hustling, who are hungry, who are young, they're speaking the truth of Atlanta right now. I think that they're speaking about the violence of Atlanta. They're speaking about the inequality in Atlanta. They're speaking about, you know, loving Atlanta, loving being from Atlanta, living and dying in Atlanta. And I think that, you know, it's important we don't kind of talk about the negative so much, because I think that although our lives are kind of constrained by that violence, they're not totally subsumed by it. So I think that in many ways they're getting into the ways that our lives are conditioned. And Catherine McKittrick, she says this, she speaks on this a lot in her work, is just that kind of Black life is kind of overdetermined by violence, but not totally, it's not kind of subsumed by it. I think that the best of young Atlanta artists are talking about really the joys and the pains and the loves and the hates and the violence and the beauty of being Black in Atlanta and being young in Atlanta. But I think living in a context of the greatest income inequality of any city in the United States, and then being able to see Black people, you know, who you feel like have accumulated a certain amount of wealth, and being able to see and touch them almost. Like you can touch people, you can see celebrities here, you can see that. But then also thinking about my life, and I don't have access to that though. I'm still trying to find a job. I'm working 2 or 3 part-time jobs. I can't get full-time employment. I work at the airport. I work at, you know, just trying to figure out how young Black people in Atlanta are trying to hustle and make their way, and how hard it is for them. And I think that the contradiction of having that Black wealth staring at you every single day and being a young person trying to figure out how to make my way within that explains the contradictory nature of Atlanta. And that's why I love the Atlanta TV show. I think that Atlanta is a site of contradiction. And that makes it beautiful to me. And that makes it enriching, and that makes it really powerful. But I think that it's a site of total contradictions. I've even reading Mo's book on Black Atlanta and about the child murders, and about how at the same time as you have the first Black mayor of Atlanta, you have the Atlanta child murders being in the backdrop. And it's funny because I think in the OutKast Bombs Over Baghdad video, I showed it in one of my classes last semester. And I showed them how, as Dre's running through that purple field, the housing projects had like the faces of the children who were killed at that time. Wow. So like if you stop and you see, I think even in the, going way back, the Blackberry Molasses video with Mr. Like those housing projects in Atlanta, before they were torn down, the faces of the children who were killed were murals on the project houses where they would be saying, stop, watch, care, look. And that being the backdrop to the glittering political success of Black Atlanta, the child murders.
Atlanta, the city too busy to hate.
Yes, and Black children are being killed. Right. So I think that contradiction is what I love about Atlanta, but I think it's also an important part. It filters through the art of the people who are from Atlanta who make music about Atlanta.
Excuse me, Dr. Hosbey, you taught me a little something. So thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time. We appreciate you. I'm Dr. Regina Bradley. This is OutKasted Conversations. We'll see y'all next time. Y'all be easy.